One of the most important things an artist does is choose what they want to include in their work of art. Even photographers do this. They're always selecting in their lens what they want to include, and more importantly, what they don't want to include. I've heard painters say they constantly ask themselves the question, what don't I need? Oops, what don't I need? What can I exclude from this image? Because very often less is more. So I have an image here that is a beautiful scene from a Greek street. And at first glance, it looks fairly simple. But when we look at it carefully, there's a lot of things going on. So we could focus on these beautiful whitewashed walls. We could focus on the wonderful play between the grays and the whites and this bold blue. We could play that against these splashes of red from the flowers. We could focus on some of the architectural elements. For instance, the path here going off in a distance, we can tell it's going off in a distance because it narrows and because the stones begin to change their shape. So we might do a focus just on that and work on what happens to round, these are semi-round, disc-shaped things that when looked at front on are round, but as they go off in the distance, they change shape. They become less deep and they turn into what we call ellipses. And so in a path, it appears to narrow. The discs turn into ellipses. They also get less distinct and they are closer together. So we might do just a study on that. We might be interested in doing a study on the stairs. The same thing is true looking at that as stairs go away in the distance. Even though they're going up, they become less distinct. The edges narrow and what we see of the step changes. For instance, we see more of the part that we step on here, and as it goes up, we can't see that, so we see more of the front, and it becomes indistinct as well. So that would be another thing we could focus on. What I decided to focus on was the stones, because I just love the look of stone. I love trying to be able to get that path going off in the distance. It's very easy to misjudge how much distance there is between here and here, so I would want to do a few sketches to make sure that I didn't make it look like it was a stairway to heaven, because that's often what the mistake that artists make. I'm also fascinated by the sky here that changes color. Now, many skies get more yellowish blue down toward the horizon. That isn't happening here. I've never been to Greece, but I know the colors are very vivid. But I do know that all skies are lighter toward the horizon, unless there's clouds, of course, but than they are up on the top. So if we fold this over and look, we can see how different the top part of the sky we see is from the horizon view. But it's so gradual that you don't see that at first glance. But that's what gives the depth of the sky and makes it look like we're looking at a sky and not just a blue cloth hanging down or something. So I chose as my palette here, a very limited palette. I have a blue, which is, now this is Prismacolor, I think. It's called Lac Bleu, L-A-Q-U-E, B-L-U-E. Most importantly, it's not a turquoise, which would not be right for what I'm working on, and it's also not a very purpley blue. So this is what it looks like darkened. And then I have a very light purple, because as we look at the colors in here, these grays go from sort of purpley blues to purpley grays to warmer grays. Then I have an earth tone. It looks like brown, but it's a, oops, that is terracotta. Okay, so that's a terracotta, a reddish brown. Looks like this. And a sepia, which looks like a brown. But I seldom use brown. When I do use browns, I like to use the earth tones, the terracotta, the sepia, the umbers, because they're more pure tone that comes from pigments that come right out of the earth. Other browns are often mixed from other ones, and I don't like them as well personally. But that's the sepia. And then very, very sparingly, because I have these stones here that I want to show some edges on, very sparingly black. And again, I seldom use black. Mostly what I'm using here is the blue. And so I began by drastically simplifying the shapes here. For instance, I chose not to do the gate at all, not to do this whole side of the picture. I may not even do detail on the steps. I might just leave those. And then I simplified these shapes. And I do like this. I'm borrowing the blue from this door and exaggerating this doorway a little bit so that I can get that blue in. So I would be inclined to start with the sky, and in order to get that graded look, I would want to go very dark on the top here and really color the paper, not leave any white of the paper. And it would take a little while. That's why I'm working very small. And then as I get down toward the horizon here, I would need to lighten my pressure so that I get a lighter look. I prefer that in this particular drawing to using different kinds of blues. I'm preferring to get this graded look with the same pencil. Because I tried it with some different blues and it just looked like a mismatch and I didn't really like it. So this is a drawing that I progressed further, and you can see how it's darker up here, lighter down here. It's all done with the same blue, and I'm looking at this and realizing that some of it is not filled in. I think I was working on an uneven surface. You have to watch that, what's below what you're working on. And then I very lightly outlined just one side of the stones here because they seem to be lighter on the right side than they are on the left side, and that's what gives the appearance of light coming down on them. So I did just that one side, and then I went in and started in the front because that's where I want the most detail, and I'm doing an uneven coloring here so that I can get that uneven mottled look of the stone, and keeping it very light on that light side, and mixing in maybe a little bit of terracotta in these front stones. And this is where I came in with a little bit of black just to pump up that one side. And again, here's one that I have worked more on. And then I did that and then just kept it very, very light as I went back and very indistinct to give it the appearance of this path going back. The shading on the buildings, I don't happen to have a gray pencil. If you have some gray pencils, that would work. If you don't, the sepia, which has a little bit of black in it, worked over the blue to get a gray or neutral look to it. So I did all of these in that neutral look, and then this wall is a little bit more purple, just the way the light is hitting it. So I went over that side with a little bit of purple. And that, it doesn't exactly match the grays of the picture, but it functions well enough to show how that part of the buildings are in shadow.